Welcome, everybody, and welcome to Building the Black Educator Pipeline podcast. I am your host, Shayna Terrell, educator activist, dedicated to the lifelong struggle of freedom and liberation for my people. We are official, y'all. We are now an official podcast, so you can find us on multiple platforms like Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your local podcast from. Please check us out. Please tell a friend to tell a friend and share. Share, like, whatever you do with podcasts, but definitely tune in to us. Major shout out to everybody who is still following us on this platform. Our co-conspirators, thank y'all for coming. And our new supporters, thank you for joining us for this episode. As always, I need to shout out Brightbeam and the Center for Black Educator Development for providing us with this platform to talk to real people in a real struggle, doing the real work. I'm happy to be back. Today's show theme, y'all, is Thank a Black Teacher. Today we'll be discussing the importance of support and appreciation for Black teachers and how our policies can support that. But again, please tell a friend to listen in to today's episode. I want to welcome my guests, my regular guests, my major supporter, my Baba, Dr. Greg Carr, Associate Professor at Howard University, but he also is the co-host of his own YouTube show, In Class with Carr. He's also a host of, I think it's called The Black Table, and also host of a K Narrative. Big following for my man, Dr. Carr, and we appreciate him taking his time out to sit with us every month to talk that stuff. What's up, Doc?
Hey, Mama Shayna, how are you? Our Queen, Harriet Tubman. You've expanded the Underground Railroad into the big platform podcast universe.
Yes, more people need to hear this word. More people need to hear you guys. So I'm so appreciative of this opportunity to be able to do that and have you on.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
But you know I crack up every time you say mama. Shayna.
Well, because you're a mama, no question. Look, and that's part of the appreciation piece. I mean, is the family, community. Teachers are just extensions of family. So, you know, Mama and Baba, we've been doing that in the African-centered education movement for many years. And that was just repeating what we brought with us on those boats when we got pulled into this criminal enterprise. So absolutely. Respect.
I love the description of America as a criminal enterprise.
That's all it is, a settler state criminal enterprise. But don't worry, it's coming apart at the seams, and we'll build something better later. So
always trying to build back better. But criminal enterprise, that was good.
Black, build back better. That's right.
Build back better in black, okay?
Yeah, that's right.
That's what we always doing.
No question.
But as you know, this country loves to, celebrate different events and have these spotlights events. And one of them is Teacher Appreciation Week. That has been a new thing. I would say, it's been around, but really catching fire. Probably because of commercialism, right? It's an opportunity to buy people's stuff and do stuff for people. But catching fire, I would say, in the last maybe 15 to 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then my pivotal question at the top of that, right? Like, we have a Teacher Appreciation Week. But do you think that we even appreciate teachers enough in this country?
I think the answer is yes and no.
Okay.
The no part is simple. The United States has never been a nation. It's always been a settler state with a lot of different people in it. And of course, we know culture is what people do, and it's never had a culture as such. I mean, there's the culture of the thousands of indigenous people groups who were here before the invaders, the cultures of the Europeans that came, the many different cultures of African people who were forced into a context of oppression and enslavement. And so when you commingle all those things and then create a racial hierarchy that is designed basically to abet extracting profit or capitalism, settler colonialism, all those kind of things, how then do you create an education system that serves that primary motive of exploitation and extraction at the same time that it also helps to enhance the humanity and help people develop themselves? The answer is simple. You don't. So when we talk about public education in the system, you're talking about education that was set up to help the political economy, and every group had a role. So when you're talking about teacher appreciation, the yes part of that is if you go into any culture, any coherent culture, it celebrates those who are responsible for helping the young people reach maturity and then play their role in a vibrant society. There's no culture in the world that doesn't celebrate teachers, because the first teachers are the family, are the parents, are the elders. You go through rites of passage, you go through initiation. But when you dump all that into a settler colony, well, the Native Americans aren't human. And the African people are slaves. And the white people got to fight their way through a racial hierarchy themselves into the top class, and most of them never get there. So when you put an education system in place, what is it for? It's for training people to play their role in the society. So when you go within those groups, within Black communities, teachers were always venerated, were always respected. I mean, I don't care whether it was on the plantations or during enslavement when elders were respected, even within enslaved people. I don't care during the Civil War and after, when those first Africans who learned how to read and write in the army came home like Carter Woodson's uncles and became teachers. When Mary Bethune testifies before Congress in the 1940s and says, I come from a people who, within the space of 2 generations, largely wiped out illiteracy in English. That you can't do that without respecting teachers. And we were both raised in households and in communities where a teacher was considered to be so valuable that you don't disrespect teachers, even when they're wrong. You could come home and try to tell on the teacher, and your parents would be like, "Nah, do what she says. I don't care what she said." Now, the question we had to ask ourselves is, when did that change, and why?
That was the follow up, and the follow up really was like, why is teaching? So I agree with you. In the history of this country, is that teachers have been celebrated and lifted up and seen like as the primary trust factor. Like people trust their kids, right? With teach, like I'm sending you to this. I trust you, and literally a teacher's word is gold. You better not say that lady was wrong. I don't care. I don't care what happened.
That's right.
Whatever decision she made was right and in the best interest of you, right? Like there was a time that like teachers were just golden. And like you said, family, extension of your family and community. But now it has just become such a thankless job where people don't care about disrespecting teachers, don't trust them, don't care to build trust with them. And I'm with you. Where did that shift happen? And it's funny, right? Because I feel like teachers are up against these two worlds, meaning super excited, right, to celebrate teachers, like because they are responsible for the development of young people. But at the same time, the struggle becomes in like, who are we developing these young people to be?
That's right.
And I feel like that is where teachers get the majority of the flack. They're not doing this, they're not doing that, when, like you said, they actually are doing what they're designed to do right now, what public education is designed to do. And that's maintain the status quo. So right. Yep. Are you producing human beings who, in the majority of the world, we don't see as major contributors to society? Yeah, but that's actually on purpose.
That's right.
But it's almost like how did the wool get pulled over teachers' eyes too to be participating in this system? But when did that shift happen? That's what teaching became, the maintaining of the status quo instead of building and developing like quality young people who are going to push forth a better generation. Like when and why?
I think for us as African people who came out of enslavement and then the long afterlives of enslavement, Jim Crow and so forth, apartheid, really you see a shift begin with desegregation. In fact, the roots of so-called Teacher Appreciation Week, the first week of May, go back to the 50s. Eleanor Roosevelt, former First Lady, lobbied Congress after she herself had been lobbied by some local teachers. And it still took almost 30 years later, the National Education Association lobbied as well. And the first National Teacher Appreciation Week really moves from March to May in 1983, 84. And then you see the National Parent Teacher Association get involved. And you see it expanded to a week, moved to May around 1984. And I say all that to say that what does the 50s represent? Well, for Black folk, it represents that shift, that last great push in the 50s and 60s for forms of legal protection. That's what we usually call the civil rights movement, the short civil rights movement. But it also represents in the world the Cold War, the arms race, the whole shift on what should children be learning to participate basically in global conflict. And so you see this emphasis on children learning math and science because we're in a brain rush with the who is the we with the Russians, and they building bombs, we building bombs. And so Teacher Appreciation Week for me in part is really a propaganda in the United States, because you're going to have to rely on these teachers to train these students not just to live great lives, but to become basically almost like deputy military to learn subjects that are going to help them advance the interests of the country. Well, black people get caught up in that mess. What really allowed us to continue to respect teachers in some ways, ironically, was apartheid, was Jim Crow. Teachers lived in our communities. They looked like us. They came from us. So when you look at the great examples, the Dunbar High Schools in D.C., Crispus Attucks in Indianapolis, you name it, everybody has their favorite stories of those teachers. And this would be our grandparents and great-grandparents at this point, if they're still around. They went to schools where the teachers looked like them, but then after integration or desegregation, and it's chronicled. The black teachers write about it in the Teachers Association histories. You see those black teachers, the best of those teachers were plucked out of those black schools, sent to those white schools, and over the decades, you see them backfilled with teachers who don't come from their communities, who increasingly look at teaching as a burden, who aren't paid as well. And so from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, with the erosion of that trust, with the erosion of the idea of the profession, and finally, with the shift in the political economy of the world, so that the type of skills people would normally try to go to school to acquire, they may not either have access to, or increasingly in a capitalist society, wonder, why do I have to go to school when I can do this and make money, or I can do this and make money? It leads to the kind of collapse of the idea even of being a teacher. And because of desegregation in part, now our schools have been backfilled. And we began to look at teachers with that suspicion and stuff too, because I mean, what is this going to yield for me in a society where cash is king, money is king, material objects are things, and why do I need this teacher? And I think that's a couple of the sources you see for this kind of erosion we face today.
Yes, and you also allude to something else that I always think about, and that's why aren't black teachers celebrated and elevated enough? So when you talk about desegregation and what that did to the role of the black teacher um, in the black community, but in society just within itself. So when you talk about desegregation, on this platform we talk about this all the time, meaning like when y'all integrated schools, who did you think were teaching these children that you integrated into these schools? And you always talk about, do you think these magical Negroes dropped just from the sky? Like, where did they come from? They were being taught by black teachers. They were being taught by black people. But what integration did was gave the notion that black people are inferior and they're not qualified to teach anybody's kids.
That's right.
We've been teaching our own kids for years.
For years.
For years. Since the beginning of time. So
And Shannon, you know who saw it coming? The teachers.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers saw it coming. In fact, I was just rereading the history of American Teachers Association. You know, every summer when we're doing Freedom School and doing Liberation Academy, I go back to the books. And this is the history of the American Teachers Association. I've talked about the state ones before. They saw it coming. After Brown, they actually created a partnership with the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, Wisconsin Association, to start putting black books in these schools that their children were going to be sent to. And in these schools, but they also, there's a whole chapter in here called Displaced Negro Teachers. They started firing and getting rid of black teachers, but the teachers who, and mind you, when we talk about the civil rights movement, every time you see a school child going up to integrated school, behind that child is not just her or his parents, but are their teachers. Because it was the teachers who were identifying, as we know when we all read The Lost Education of Horace Tate, it was the teachers who were identifying the students. But the teachers who were organized across the South primarily, they saw this coming. They said, this is what's going to happen. And here we are in 2022 asking ourselves what can be done. The first thing I think we need to do is go back and look at the playbooks that we inherited. It's disrespectful for us to ignore our own memory. We could solve some of these problems by going back and seeing, okay, where do we make a mistake? Let's course correct.
Mm-hmm. And I think going back into our history and our memory, definitely, we always talk about this, how important it is, understanding that this isn't some type of nuance. Like, I still sit in meetings today and people are still like, I just don't know why there aren't enough black teachers in the profession. Like they really like. I just don't know why. And there's still people who can't connect it back to desegregation or brown person for education.
Yeah.
And there's straight denial sometimes of the fact that that's actually what it's rooted in. And what these black teachers knew and why they saw it coming is we can have equal protection under the law all we want, but we know what you really think about us, and we know what you really think about black people.
That's right.
And we know how far the law extends, right?
That's right.
What
And
protections and policies do I have locally that is going to protect my job?
exactly, and I'm glad you said that, because this is the other thing that desegregation introduced in some ways. It accelerated something that had been forestalled by segregation, and that is the kind of enhancement of class cleavages in black communities. I'll never forget sitting in school district of Philadelphia meetings when I was an administrator there, and we'd have breaks for meetings, and I'd hear people talking, as kids call it, ear hustling. And I'll never forget the day I heard a white administrator say to a younger white administrator who was trying to decide, where should I send my child for school? This elder white administrator said to the other white administrator, "Oh, you never risk your own." And then go back into the meeting to decide policy about other people's children. So with all due respect, there should be no anybody saying, well, I don't know why okay, that person should immediately be displaced to do something else in the education system. You should not be making policy, because these are other people's children in your mind. And so I said all that to say, what we saw with the end of desegregation, however, is you've got black policymakers who will sit and make policy about the school children of the masses, but who would never send their own children to those same schools. Well, that's natural in a capitalist society, because that's the class division. Now what we have is a black petty bourgeois who's no longer trapped by Jim Crow. So the principal and the AP and the teachers whose children would be in the same school in the 30s, 40s, 50s, now is 2020, and they are in there making decisions about children who look like them, but their own children are in private schools or the best public school in the system, out of district, out of where, or send. And then when they go to college, they're not at HBCUs, they're going to send them to Duke or Stanford. And then at the same time, come in the room with a straight face and talk about what those other black children need. You should be fired, sir. You should be relieved of duty. And then what you find is, now you couldn't get an entry-level job at the place you sent your child. But somehow you lording over these children who are deeper in the class structure. And these same children are not stupid. They respect you on the surface, but them, their families, their communities, there has been now an erosion over the last several decades of the benefit of the doubt that we gave the first couple of generations who did that. Now, instead of saying, well, Dr. So-and-so, whose daughter goes to such and such, we still respect, because now it's like, F her. Your child don't even go here. So now what you see is the pushback, and I don't know how we solve that, Shane. I'll be quite honest with you, because because people look like teaching the children of the poor and working class is sacrifice. Even the language. We have to sacrifice and come back. Why are you calling it sacrifice? Oh, because you don't think those people are as good as you. You think it's like working at the shelter for animals or something. Nah. I mean, seriously.
I wouldn't say they think it's working at the shelter for animals, but this is what I
listen to the language. Sacrifice, service. Why are you equating teaching with some kind of discomfort that you have to be some kind of hero to come in? No.
Well, I think that's the larger part of the disconnect of community. And I think that is what we don't talk about enough when we talk about desegregation / integration, and what that did to fracture the black community, where people can now feel so disassociated from the community that it is seen as I'm providing a service to a community, where in white culture, I feel like they don't provide service to each other as people anyway. It's transactional, meaning the service I'm going to provide for you is like, I'm going to come do some carpentry or whatever in your house, or some financial service, meaning the service of like, this is my community and I'm connected to a community. In order for my community to thrive, these are the things that need to happen within my own community, right? Like, that's white people function so in a majority state, they don't have to worry about a community. The world is their community.
Right.
Whereas us as black folks, like, no, y'all, we dead have to work together. And sometimes we have to work together in specific areas and specific neighborhoods and pull together to have just a better quality of life for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that when you talk about desegregation and integration, it fractured community. So it's seen as a service to someone because you're seeing yourself as a Black person as not a part of that community. So even
That's
when
right.
you're talking about service, right? We talk about service differently in our circle because we are servant leaders. It is your job. You are connected to servant leadership, meaning your work is not your own. You are doing this for a community of people. Like, and not like I'm a hero and I'm coming in. No, this is what you are born to do. This is your mission. We are connected to one another's humanity. And
Yes.
that's just different, right? Like that I think
It's,
is what
it's
got
supposed to be
fractured.
different. It's supposed to be different, but it's difficult because, again, class informs all of these relations in this capitalist society. So even among white people,
Mm-hmm.
the class function operates. We could even look into popular culture. You go back to a very popular film about a teacher in the mid part of the century, Goodbye, Mr. Chips, coming out of England. The idea of this, master teacher who's stuck at this exclusive boarding school in England, small salary, never gets married, toils for all these decades, and all the class politics are there among the British elite. Come to the United States, something even more contemporary, something like Dead Poets Society with Robin Williams, this contrarian teacher who come in pushing back against the ranks of class. Well, this whole notion of class hierarchy is there. It wasn't absent in Black communities. It was forestalled by enslavement and Jim Crow. So now what you see is this idea of even servant leadership. We see cultivated this idea of the Black folk who get out, you should give back. Even the language. Give back to what? Oh, you escaped. I mean, I think you put it perfectly. This idea of disassociation. So you don't really, it's not like you're still looking at this. In other words, who told you a servant is a leader? In other words, unless you're talking about models. You know what I'm saying? Models of leadership, but these people shouldn't do what you say just because you went to college and they didn't.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And by the way, what are you doing over there? Oh, actually, I'm taking a picture for Instagram of myself serving them so I could give myself credit. Because then you see the insidious kind of creeping in of the idea of I want credit.
Yes.
As a servant, can you
Almost like
imagine Jesus
no.
taking a selfie on Palm Sunday? We're here with an invaded valley. Let me take this, put it on the gram. What are you doing? I think that's part of the challenge we have.
Child, when you don't know how many times I use Jesus as an example to people, like, can y'all imagine if Jesus existed right now and y'all out here taping this man doing miracles? Do you know what Jesus would do? He would flip your phone over.
No question.
I don't need this. Why are you showing people this? If people want this, they can come to the house of my Father, right? Like, Jesus be out here flipping phones over the way y'all be doing. He would not. Jesus would not be out here talking about follow me on Instagram and look at my miracles. Like, he's not about that life. That's not what my man Jesus, he wasn't on that type of time. But I use that, all that.
Right.
And I say this.
Foundation has awarded Jesus Fellows. No. Really? The Jesus Fellows? How much they get paid? Oh, no, you don't get paid. What?
I'm not about to apply for this fellowship. That is what the common mind, right? It's like now, the modern mind, excuse me. Like that's, ain't no money in the Jesus Fellowship. I ain't doing that.
No. In fact, look, I was a fellow, but you saying you can put me on your payroll? Yeah. What I need to do? Just show me where he is. No problem. The only Jesus fellow that got paid was Judas.
And we know how that story
exactly.
And we know how that story ended.
Right? And whomsoever I shall kiss, that same be he Jesus. Hold him fast. And you know what? Judas couldn't even stand it. So y'all look out for them Negroes that get paid to serve you.
Mm-hmm.
Because
it's a dangerous game. It's a dangerous game out here. Dangerous game out here. No. One of the luxuries we have of you joining our show is like you also have a law degree and you also a law professor. Mm-hmm. So we need to talk law. Sometimes we're like, my man Dr. Carr. So some of the things I think about is what policies could actually be changed so that we do have true appreciation for teachers in this country and that Black teachers are elevated and celebrated. So one of the things I think about, right, like when we are, so the work that we're doing at the center, right, trying to recruit more Black teachers, sometimes we come up against a slippery slope when we're saying like, nah, like we are targeting Black students or our services are just for Black people, right?
Yeah.
And we deal with universities who are like, we're going to say marginalized people. right? Or
Mm-hmm.
they do we're going to do the people of color, right? So that it becomes this
As if white people
targeted.
are less.
Exactly.
We're not people of color. All mean y'all.
Just y'all, right? Anybody who's non-white are
Anybody who's not
people of
white. You
color.
can't say non-white though, they get mad.
But
People of color.
that's what people of color, people who are non-white, or when they
Not
use the word, the new term is BIPOC, right? Black and
BIPOC.
indigenous, yes,
That's something.
people of color.
Somebody
It
call
just
me BIPOC.
means
Get ready to lose your biped, bicuspid.
all it means is non-white, right? Like
Yeah, just
if
say non-white. Can't say it, can you? Mm-hmm.
no, they cannot, and that that wouldn't be written anywhere. All the
Nah,
folks who are non-white will
no,
seek to reap the benefits of this
no.
policy or this program. Mm-mm.
The power of whiteness is in its invisibility, or as they said in The Usual Suspects, the devil's greatest trick was convincing you it didn't exist. So therefore,
Right.
if you say white, you've named it. Now you got a problem. So let's just say white without saying white. Okay, BIPOC. Okay, people of color. Yeah, because the power of whiteness lies in not naming it. As long as you don't name it, it can operate as if it ain't there, when in fact it structures everything.
Yes.
So now whites, yeah, they say no. Well, we're gonna say people of color. So go on. So I mean, so in terms of policy, you saying the institutions won't let us even say black?
Correct. Or B, develop stuff specifically to black.
Mm-hmm.
And you get into, sometimes I start thinking about rules and laws around affirmative action,
Sure.
meaning
Which we
can
won't have to worry about much longer because the Supreme Court going to knock the teeth out of that in the next few months. But
talk
well,
to me about that.
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's the Harvard and North Carolina cases that the Supreme Court will be hearing. The Students for Fair Admissions at Harvard, basically, a billionaire, Ed Bloom, and others, basically Blooms, the Mercers, and them, the ones who funded Sarah Fisher down in Texas, Fisher versus Texas. University of Texas. She didn't even get into the University of Texas. That's a story for another day. The whole argument is you should just be basing college admissions on test scores, on grades, and don't look at race. And so Harvard uses race as one of many elements to decide admissions, including legacy, which is really the real form of weaponized affirmative action, whiteness. Long story short, they're arguing that, well, based on test scores, just on test scores and grades and that kind of non-academic, academic licensure, there should be more Asians here. Now, Harvard is already a polyglot in terms of race and culture and admissions, certainly to undergraduate level. So, but they're saying, no, it should be even more. But that ain't really the goal of these white boys. What they want to do is get rid of race in any way. You can't consider race in any form. And, for me, I'm like, that's cool. Why are you applying to Harvard in the first place? And at the University of Alabama, so you telling me that cat that runs the 4.40 and catches all those footballs has a top ACT scoring grades? No. We're considering athletic ability. Oh, okay. Okay, so y'all got other criteria other than grades. If you want to go run a football in the slave economic concern, University of Georgia, Kentucky, or Alabama, then you got other concern. But they're going to get rid of affirmative action. And for me, I'm okay with that because it might actually push us back toward having common sense. In terms of policy and teachers, I think, they're the ones we all know increase pay, because a lot of times prestige comes with an amount. How much are you paying teachers, right? If you look at some of the, Scandinavian countries, some of the more culturally, racially homogenous countries, it's a profession that is so valued. Well, guess what? What can you do for black teachers that would do something for everyone? You could subsidize their goals, for example. What if you became a teacher, and becoming a teacher, that means that your employer now will pay for your education, no matter what you want to do. I want to get a PhD, we'll pay for it. I want to get a license I want to go to law school, we'll pay for it. Oh, so if I'm a teacher in this district, you mean you will subsidize my education at the state university to go to law school? Sure, absolutely. In other words, they're at the answer, well, what can we do just for black people? No. See, the trick is do it for everybody. Now, when you get that subsidy, if you're in North Carolina, I want to go to North Carolina Central Law School. I want to go to Howard Law School. I want to go to FAMU. I want to go to Texas Southern. If I want to go to grad school, I'm going to go to HBCU if I'm in the South. Because I can use this money anywhere, right? Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of support, trick out the schools with the best equipment, what kind of irony is it that on Teacher Appreciation Day, people say one of the gifts you can give teachers is personalized classroom supplies? Wait a minute, hold up. To appreciate you, you're going to give me stuff for my job that I should have in there in the first place. Look at the irony of that. And so you say, so I mean, I worked fast food to put my way through college for part. And so I'm saying, what I want on Worker Appreciation Day, a better spatula so I can work harder at winning. This appreciation? No. I'm saying no. Give me some money or give me some time off, paid leave, or at school. I mean, in other words, policy changes don't require changes in the law,
right,
until they do. This is the last thing I'll say very quickly. What we talk about affirmative action, all those kind of things, those are not prohibited by the Constitution. Most of the challenges we face in terms of race-based solutions are based on courts and judges who interpreted the 14th Amendment, who interpreted the 15th Amendment in terms of voting rights and other things, who interpreted these amendments in ways that narrow those solutions. The original purpose of affirmative action in the 1960s was to remedy past discrimination. Lewis Powell and them in the Bakke case make a judicial interpretation to switch that to diversity. That's not in the Constitution. Now, until we get a different kind of court, those of you who want to go to law school, become judges and go forward, until we get 9 Ketanji Onyeka Brown Jacksons on the court, we're going to have to eat that. But the point is, judges made that decision. There's nothing in the law that prohibits race-based policy solutions except judges have interpreted it to narrow it. So this is a fight we have to understand. And by the way, this might be a bulletin for some. God didn't write the Constitution either. So even if it was in the Constitution, change it. We have to have a different attitude. We have to have the attitude of our great-grandparents, our grandparents, people who said, I don't give a damn what's written down. This is wrong, and we will move against it. And you saw what they got for that. What? Success. Success. Yes.
At every turn.
Every turn. At every turn.
At every turn. And fought hard for that.
Exactly.
Fought.
Exactly.
Had the will to win. Didn't back down.
Exactly. If I were to say one policy recommendation for teachers, I mean K-12, I mean college, university, I have a lot of friends and family who are staff at universities, the people who cut the grass, who feed the children, who do all these kind of things. You see in higher education now this move to privatize those jobs. In part, it is to save costs for these universities, the top ones of which are basically hedge funds. That's really what they are. But a lot of people for generations took those jobs because if you had a job at a university, driving the shuttle, if you had a job at a university, cleaning up in the buildings, your child could attend tuition free.
For free or reduced, yep.
Exactly. So you have
still can.
No, in many schools, but they're trying to remove that. I would say not only reestablish it universally, extend it to K-12. You know, people will go teaching if they could be guaranteed their child could go to college for free.
Oh, yes. Without a doubt, especially because of the cost of college. And I want to give a shout out to Columbia University. My mother worked there for many years. I had the opportunity to go to Columbia University for free. I chose not to because I did not want to stay in
But you could have, though.
I could have went for free, but I went. They paid a portion of my tuition to go to Temple University. So shout out. Yes, they did. So shout out to Columbia University. Shout out to my mom.
Shout out to your mom. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised, Shayna, and your mom would know this much better, obviously, than both of us. You may know it yourself. I wouldn't be surprised if that policy was not either established or expanded during the time that Columbia University was at war with the community in Harlem that accused Columbia of being a colonial occupier. In other words, in the 60s and 70s, black folk and brown folk in New York went to war with Columbia over a lot of these things. I wonder if that policy wasn't expanded or enhanced, and maybe even some of those black and brown people in Columbia were hired as a result of the community intervening.
I wonder. My mother was administrator of faculty affairs at Columbia University.
Wow.
So I do wonder. Like,
how many years was she there?
I was just thankful. Ooh, I don't know how many years my mom was there.
It wasn't 5 or 10 years.
Well, she used to work for Columbia Presbyterian Hospital and then moved on to working for the college. But she had over 25 years of service.
And this is very important. Well, you're giving us a policy fix. Because a lot of black folk took those jobs in part because their children could benefit from those jobs.
I think that's an excellent recommendation, though, that if you are a teacher in conjunction with the university, that your kid could get free or reduced education. I think that's dope. I think that
even if you're not in conjunction with a university, in a place like Philly or Detroit, in a place anywhere, if you are in a public school district, that school district has set aside a fund to subsidize your children's college education. So when my child is 2 years old, no problem. Every year you're here, we're putting money aside. We want y'all to pinch off $3 out your $100 salary for a college savings fund. Well, guess what? We're not only going to match it. When the day you get hired, we start putting this little money aside for your child. So if you're there 10 years and you leave, your child's now 15, you still got something that you can't touch except to help pay the tuition bill of your child, no matter where she or he goes to school. I mean, that's a simple thing to begin to create.
That's an amazing policy. I would think that it's really targeted. That will have to do with benefits package and all of that. I think that, again, folks would feel appreciated or like the job is worth it in terms of a benefit for them or getting something back for them. Do you see any legal policies that could be targeted specifically at the appreciation and celebration or the elevation of Black teachers that folks would try to fight, knock down, deem illegal, deem preferential treatment?
Yeah, that's easy. No, because as long as there is one, my mama used to call, because we were in the first generation who were bused. We're really the kind of first and a half. My older cousins and then me. I started first grade in Nashville in 1971. Mm-hmm. So they sent us out. We were the shock troops. Those children, those Black children, all around the South. My mama used to call them the diehards. Those are the people who, when you get there, they looking at these Black children like, we don't want you here, but you're gonna be in my classroom, and I'm gonna figure out a way to punish you. And then on the other side, you had those young Black teachers who were in there who fought for us. And you had white teachers who fought for us too. But we didn't realize the battle was going on like that, but our parents did. So my mom used to call them the diehards. In other words, this is going to die hard. You might even have to die. But the whole point is that as long as there are diehards, there will be challenges to those policies. So you say, well, I live in Baltimore, for example, and ain't nobody going to challenge that. No. As long as there's some diehard around here with a billionaire behind them, they're going to file a lawsuit. So the minute they see the word Black in that policy, they're going to sue. And guess what? They will probably win because the courts have disallowed race-based solutions. That's why you see this whole scramble for proxies for race. Class is one. So when they say, okay, those who have lower than this income can get this policy, what they're really trying to say is Black. But they can't say Black because that's when that's what you see the whole mess in California now around the reparations thing and lineage. Let's say lineage instead of race. Why? Because if you say race, it's prohibited by California Constitution and it's going to be challenged in federal court and we'll probably lose. Now, until we get different type of judicial decisions, it's going to be difficult to push race-based solutions for anything. Okay. Now, if you say teachers who are studying these subject areas, who are teaching these subject areas, students, that's a possibility too. In terms of teacher appreciation, you can certainly craft things that are content specific that can address this. This is the war finally on critical race theory. Critical race theory, as we talked about many times, isn't being taught anywhere, K-12. But really what they're saying is we don't want no Black stuff. So now the reason but they can't say we don't want no black stuff because then again they've triggered race. But the beautiful thing about the critical race theories, which is why I encourage all the folks who are practicing law, who are out there trying to pass all those laws. I love them. Please pass them. And then as soon as they are passed, y'all go to war with the curriculum that is excluding Black people and accuse them of being racist and put white in it. See how long those laws stay on the books. In other words, see the mistake these idiots made is you can't use race, which means what? You can't use race. You're using whiteness. We're not using whiteness. Did you tell them to get rid of Harriet Tubman? Yeah. Then that's white supremacy. Let's go to court. They will abandon these laws. I'm telling you. But no, I don't think race-specific solutions for Black folk are. It would be difficult to survive legal challenge in the short term. But we can get around that. It's not even something we need to assess about.
Got you. I mean, that was just some of my thoughts because I think that a lot of times policies are what prohibit us from true appreciation of teachers. And is what, to me, forces it somewhat in a thankless job, meaning if you are looking at the conditions, and it may not even be specific to teachers, it may be specific to money, to districts, to class. Because if you look at the job and how it is in poor Black communities versus what the teaching profession looks like in rich white communities, it's a totally different experience. That's like right. Another problem that we're having or that you see is like, why is the profession so white dominated and so white female dominated, right? Because of my experience as a young white woman from K through 12, is I'm watching my teachers and they're happy to be teaching and they're coming in and they're getting out at 2:30 and they're going home and their kids are coming to school with them because everybody lives in this neighborhood and we go to school in the same district. That's a totally different vision than what Black children in our communities are seeing about the teaching profession. So it's nothing if I live in a rich district, a suburban district, or a private district where I go to a private school. They're like, yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a teacher. And then even when you think about the wages, if I'm not coming from a background that's like I'm hustling and struggling, and my expectation is that I'm going to meet a man who's going to be a
Right.
primary breadwinner, like ain't nothing wrong with the salary that's earned because I'm still a significant contributor to my household on a teacher's salary. I still get to leave at 2:30. And my children going to school in the district I'm in. Like, we okay. The experience,
That's right.
experience of being a teacher and watching what's happening is completely different from a white child's eyes, from a white woman's eyes. It's completely different than it is for a Black child who is watching. I barely see any Black people in this profession. Number one, like I don't see them at all. Number two, it looks like everybody that holds these jobs are coming from outside the community. So this actually isn't a valuable option for somebody from my community. Like we don't do this kind of work. And the Black teachers that I see in here, God, they look stressed, right? Like all this, like I don't want to hold this weight.
Nope.
I don't want this responsibility. Like I don't want this. Or you in here, you angry? Or you in here, you got to be the freedom fighter of the school. Like I actually ain't about that. I don't want to do that. I just I want to teach. I want to teach. So the experience of what they're seeing is different.
That's
right. But I think the reason why I wanted to lift up policy because it is policy that create these conditions.
That's right.
And it's complexity of policies, right? Because there's so many we can talk to that actually points to what created the conditions that I just described. Why the experience through one eyes is this and experience through one eyes is another.
That's right.
But that is a key indicator for why Black children don't want to teach and why you don't see Black children in the profession. They see the profession in a totally different light than you would if you were a young white woman growing up in the suburbs.
That's right. That's
even when we talk about marketing the profession, when I'm marketing the profession to a young white woman, she has the option of go work in a poor Black district if she wants to, but she also has the option she don't have to. I don't.
No. Or she can go there and practice with the idea that I'm not only going to stay here 2 or 3 years and then I'm getting the hell out. And you see that a lot. I mean, to me, that's the best marketing for teachers is the teacher.
Yes.
And that's why even in terms of policy, we walk our way back to that specific classroom. A district level goal, it seems to me, would be everybody who works in administration in a school district above a certain level should spend X number of hours a month or even a week. I'd say a week, maybe one day a week in a different school every week. Mm-hmm. In other words, if you're a policymaker, you have to spend a day in a school, not coming to supervise, not coming to dictate policy. No, coming in to listen. You spend this week, you're going to kindergarten. Next week, you're going to first grade at a different school. And just listen. Somebody comes in, oh, I'm nervous. Please. I've been sent here. School district policy is apt to spend, because I know as a teacher, the best policymakers I encountered in Philadelphia were school teachers. When I saw Cassandra Jones and them, I'm talking about senior level policymakers who, when somebody would say something crazy, clearly you've never taught 8th grade. I'll never forget one day when they were talking about uniforms and Sister Gwen, what was Gwen's last name? I can't remember. She said, look, I was a junior high school teacher. Let me tell you one of the worst ideas in the history of education, middle school. Because you got babies and beards.
I love middle school.
Look like a baby next to somebody with a beard. Now, y'all understand? Y'all talking about, you ain't even considered developmental change, but she was a teacher for decades before she became an administrator. You got school district administrators now who think they know because they went to Johns Hopkins and studied grit. No. Once a week, you got to go and sit in this 8th grade classroom and say nothing. And then afterwards, listen to do listening. Now, how does that translate to the school? Immediately. The best policymakers for teachers, creating new teachers, are teachers. My man Larry Crow, who's an interviewer with history makers, in fact, I call him Black America's interviewer. He's interviewed so many of our folks. He was talking to a sister, Naomi Long Madgett, who is a poet. She's an ancestor now. She was a teacher for many years. She said, when I was a child, I became interested in English because of my English teacher in high school. And she said, after class one day, I went to her and said, doesn't it depress you? I mean, I'm so interested. She said, when I was in class, it was just her and me. I was so interested. And then she said, aren't you depressed that everybody isn't as excited? She told me, if in one college generation, one person catches the vision, that's enough. And what Mama Paget said, who spent her years in Detroit, she taught in the Detroit public schools, and she was a poet, well-known poet, in fact, won many awards. She said, at the time, I said, that's crazy. I can't imagine that. She said, you know what, though? These decades later, that is the thing that carried me through college, through graduate school, through my career as an administrator and a teacher. That one thing she told me: you teach the future, you don't know. So if you are a student, teacher appreciation, I'm going to tell you what teachers would love. Write those teachers who impacted you, write them and tell them specifically what they did. Tell them specifically what they did. Because people talk about teachers all the time. The teachers can't hear it.
Segue right into what's like. So for Teacher Appreciation Week at the center, we are doing Think a Black Teacher. And Doc, you could also tell me, right? Because I had like this thought, and you can tell me if this exists. But I would like to declare, if not the week of Teacher Appreciation Week, then the week after, Black Teacher Week.
Make it in June, though.
Okay, so June. But you are historical. Like, does that exist?
No, I mean, well, it exists. Well, not in that form.
Okay, bam. So we're declaring it right here on the podcast first show, Black Teacher Week.
That I know of.
Listen, you know a lot. So if you don't know the origin of a Black Teacher Week, don't go on it, then it don't exist. Okay, we making it exist today.
That may not be true, Shannon. I'm saying, now you declaring it. No, the one thing I know is the more we know we don't know. I suspect that has been proposed. In fact, I'll be surprised if they didn't have that in the 60s and 70s, particularly in those battlegrounds. But by declaring it today, you're renewing it. I would say June because, the dean of the graduate school at Howard, my friend Dana Williams, her mama was a school teacher for many years in a little town in Louisiana. And her mama used to always say in June when school was out, or in February or January, whenever during the school year, she'd say, June can't come too soon. That was the thing among Black teachers, right? So make the first week of June Teacher Appreciation Week.
Black Teacher Week. Black Teacher Week. First week of June. Black Teacher Week.
June. Right there, just before graduation, when they already didn't let you go, you took the standardized test, the children halfway coming. That could be a celebration week now.
Black Teacher Week. Let's get it. No question. You are on to something with this write a letter, because what we want folks to do for Teacher Appreciation Week for Think of Black Teacher, go on social media, make a video, go on Twitter, write to your Black teacher, but thank Black teachers, man, and hashtag it Think a Black Teacher.
Well, I would love that. I love the idea of the video because that's where we are now, but I also love the idea of the letter, because the thing about the letter is, and here we go, policymakers, district level policymakers. Because when you're at a university, when you go out for tenure, one of the categories is teaching. One thing you can solicit is letters from your former students. When those letters start coming in, I've never known a professor who didn't weep because they never get to see the writing. And then you put it in your file. If you're a third grade teacher, you've been teaching 2 years, much less 20 or 25, 30 years. Your students, if you've been teaching 30 years, they got children. They may have grandchildren. You see them in the mall, you see them at the store. What if they wrote you a letter? And what if that letter could also go in your file? What if the policymakers say, now this is the impact? I argued this many times at Howard. I'm saying, y'all keep talking about publications. Do you know students are human publications? How do you quantify the human publication? Why? Because you never ask those. And the only thing you say, and then here's the last thing I'll say. If you want to know whether or not that's valuable, ask yourself, what teacher influenced you? And have you ever told them that?
Yeah.
And then, I remember seeing some of it. Well, did you tell her? No, I guess okay.
So speaking of that, right? Because we see you here as the great Baba Dr. Carr. Mm-hmm. I want to give you the opportunity to thank some Black teachers who have influenced you and impacted you. Who would you say, like, when you think about Black folks, teachers that have influenced and impacted your life? Who, I know it's probably a list, but who would you think? Who would you shout out, Baba?
Well, I feel, for those who can't say what I'm about to say, which I expect you would say too, because you, especially since you shared with us today, a glimpse at what your mother did, making a way for you. It's my parents. It's our parents. It's my mother. It's my father. My mother, at her funeral, we recorded her. My sister recorded her a week before she made transition, and she said, "I always wanted to be a teacher." And she said, because people would look at me and say, "You look like a teacher." She said, "I never made teacher, but my children went on to do a lot of things." And at that moment, the world found out. And I thought to myself, no, you did make teacher. I'm a teacher. You know what I'm saying? My mother was a teacher. You know what I'm saying? She taught us in times that I don't even remember. At the wake, you cats coming up and say, "I remember when your mama had you and your brother and y'all be sitting out on the steps." I said, "I don't even remember that." How? Oh, you was probably about 3. Okay, see what I'm saying? I mean, the first teachers are often the mothers. My father was an intellectual. Neither one of them can get out of junior high school. It didn't matter. He was always reading and writing. So my first teachers were there. Elementary school, those shock troops, Miss Hill and them, and elementary school, first grade, second grade, these black teachers who were now fighting their own racial battles that only as an adult I realized y'all have been busting here too, fighting. Even white teachers like Miss Smith in the 6th grade who taught about ancient Egypt, I'll never forget them. Milton Kennedy, my 8th grade teacher, black man, one of the few black men I knew. When I see that cat on Abbott Elementary, that was Milton Kennedy. With that same affect, that same, high school, Miss Scott, when the Atlanta child murders came on, Miss Scott made us all wear ribbons. And I remember a white student asking a black student, "Why y'all got those ribbons on?" And the black girl told the white girl, she said, "Miss Scott cared about her children." This was during the Atlanta child murders, you know what I'm saying? I mean, now Miss Scott's granddaughter was a freshman at Howard. So they called me. I said, "Oh, okay." I mean, there was no granddaughter. You know what I'm saying? Her daughter was younger than me. But I mean, that's the role we have to play. Willie Moore, the band director, who we used to give hell. Mr. Moore, who said, one day we was tearing up the band room. "Mr. Moore, what's wrong?" Mr. Moore looked at us and said, "I used to do it because it's funny. Now I do it for the money." To this day, when I get, these kids, I think about Willie Moore and I start laughing. Why? That's the kind of jokes teachers tell that you won't get unless you're a teacher. Yes. You know what I'm saying? I used to do it because it's funny. Now I do it for the money. Now, he didn't mean that completely, but what he was giving us a glimpse into is, y'all tearing my heart up. Y'all come in here. I used to do this for the love of training the next generation. I know y'all better than this. And in college, Jamie and McDonald Williams, Dury Scott, Al Hadid, who came in one day and played John Coltrane, all these crazy saxophone sounds. He said, "If you understand that, you understand black nationalism." We was like, well, I guess we don't understand black nationalism. What he was doing is tearing up our minds so that we would be open to new things. These are the master teachers. In law school, Dave Williams from Detroit, tax lawyer, came in the first day of federal income tax and said, "All y'all in here whose daddies and mamas is lawyers, I'm not talking to you. Those of you in here scared that y'all going to jail because you messed your taxes up, I'm teaching y'all federal income tax. Everybody else eavesdropping." Immediately, he demystified federal income tax. A master teacher from the hood of Detroit. You know what I'm saying? Who was like, "All you privileged kids from Ohio State, all y'all want to, nah, I'm not even teaching y'all taxes because y'all think y'all know everything anyway. I'm telling you people who scared of tax." But he knew more about tax than all of them. Graduate school, of course, E.K. Newsom, Malefi Asante, Theophilo Obenga, the people who demystified education. And then into now, of course, I think about all of those academic advisors in Philadelphia Freedom Schools, all the public school teachers I learned from in Philadelphia, Aisha Imani. I would just go hang out with her at William Penn. I think about you. I think about Stephanie. I think about Ansha Ray. I think about all of you all who are teachers because I continue to learn from teachers. In Jamele Anderson, I think about all of y'all. And of course, at the center, we got to talk about our Baba, you know what I'm saying? Who created this space for us now to come in and do this work. So, yes, I guess in summary, yes, of course, Baba El-Meki and his mother, who I never got to meet, but I know her just like people who meet me say, "Oh, we know, no, you know my mama." Mm-hmm. I know his mother because I know Sharif El-Meki. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying, just like when I see you, I know your mom. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, thank a teacher, y'all. Thank a teacher, particularly those who get paid to come in the room, because they're not just teachers. They got to be your auntie, your uncle, your mama. They got to be your defender in rooms you never go in when they get ready to put your ass out of school. And you never know that person you always joking on is the one that kept you in the room.
A word on your behalf.
A word on your behalf that they never repeated to you. You know what I'm saying? That's but thank those teachers, yeah.
That's right. So please join us in our campaign to thank a Black teacher. And exactly what Baba said, write a note. If you want to write a note, again, in today's day and age, you can screenshot it, tweet
Sure.
it
Yeah.
out. Yeah, but
Oh,
please.
yeah. You can
And
tweet out the
hashtag. Yes,
yeah.
thank a Black teacher. You don't know how much you would impact the
Oh, I like that.
lives of so many folks by doing that. I think about, like, of course, my parents were my first teachers, my mom and my dad. My dad taught me a lot about the world and a lot about being a woman in the world and how I have to be independent and I have to learn how to defend myself. My dad taught me how to fight. So we didn't have no
Oh, man.
we had no brothers. We had no brothers. So my first self defense class was with my dad, right? Like, but so much about the world and about like loving and family and security and just the intelligence, right? I learned a lot from my parents and my godmom. A lot of people wonder sometimes how I know so much about religion in the Bible because my godmom was a Pentecostal woman. Now, I don't subscribe to religion, but she taught me that Bible, front and back, and I mean literally before entering kindergarten, right? Like I knew my Bible, so I knew my Bible. I knew my Bible before going to actual school. I knew how to read, write, and spell my name before going to school because of my godmother.
Come on. What's her name?
Her name is Sarah McCormick. She's with the ancestors right now. So shout out to Sarah McCormick. But you know, my mom and my dad was working. She wasn't. She was basically my babysitter, but she was my godmom. She taught me how to read, write, spell my name before even entering school, and knew that Bible front and back.
Come on, man.
Because she taught it to us. I mean, we sit down and read it. So you're absolutely right. Our community, the people who love us, they are our first teachers.
You got to name a couple of teachers, though.
I will. I'm about to. I always shout out Sylvia Lugo. She was a Hispanic woman.
Yes.
She was my kindergarten teacher. And the reason why I always shout out Ms. Lugo, the reason why I have such a positive relationship with school is because of Sylvia Lugo. I mean, I had a great time in pre-K. I remember my pre-K teacher, Mr. Larry, as well. But when I tell you, this woman made me love school and she made me love her. She was just so beautiful and bright and made school such an inviting place. Literally, when this woman was absent from school, I would cry. And my mom would be like, Shayna, I know Ms. Lugo's not here. You have to go to school. And I just didn't want to go. If Ms. Lugo wasn't there, I didn't want to go. Like, I hated the fact that I had to have a sub or she was absent. I just loved her so much. She created such a positive relationship between me and school. So even at times when I didn't get along with teachers or I didn't have such a good time, I would always think about Ms. Lugo and think about there's hope. Like my teacher next year may be like Ms. Lugo. So I've always loved school because of her. She instilled that in me. And then when I move up and I get into middle school, I had like this cluster of Black teachers who were dope. So I want to shout out Sharon Batts and Joe Shepard. Wow. There were two Black women who believed in Black children. And remember, I tell you all the time as podcast, I am from the South Bronx, from the projects of the South Bronx. And I went to a parochial school dead in the middle of a projects, right? So I lived across the street in St. Mary's projects, but my school was dead in the middle of John Adams projects. But like the high rises, all that all around, but the school was in the middle of the projects. It didn't sit on a block by itself. It's in the middle of the projects. So I went to school with teachers with those two Black women who believed that us children from that neighborhood could achieve. Meaning, I was we were in 6th grade, and they're like, you will be leaving our classes reading at a high school reading level. And because that's what we believe. So we're going to give you high school books. You're going to get high school text. You're going to decode high school text. You're going to go over it as a class because you will leave this class reading on a high school reading level. So me leaving out of 8th grade, I believe, was reading on a 12th grade reading level at that point. But it's because of those women. It's because they believed in us and they gave us the hard stuff to do, just like we do in school. They believed heavily. But believed heavily in us. So definitely shout out to those women. As I got into high school, I didn't have as many Black teachers as I had because I moved out to go into high school in the North Bronx, like outside of my community. So I didn't have as many Black teachers in high school. I did have teachers who, again, liked me, believed in me, and rooted for me. But I didn't have as many Black teachers. As well as the same in college. My Black teachers were mostly in the African-American Studies department at Temple University. So shout out to all those wonderful Black people at Temple University who raised me. You probably know one of the professors that I always think about, and I always shout him out, is Dr. Montero.
Montero. No, in fact, Tony. In fact, when when the new chair came in from African Studies at Temple, she asked me, she said, do you know any professors in the area who you thought might be good to teach for this summer school? I said, you got to go get Tony Montero and Fair Griffin. So Tony came to Temple because I recommended him.
Shout out for that recommendation. And the reason why I always shout out Dr. Montero, because he probably doesn't know this, but I was a little wild back in the day. Like,
really?
But like with my mouth, everything, like say anything in front of anybody, like Black liberation is what it's about, and this is what needs to happen. Dr. Montero put me sound like sis. I mean, that's all good, but you got to be conscious of the company you keep. They will come for you. So there's a way to do this. You know what I mean? So help me channel my energy. In my fight for freedom and liberation in the right space, in the right place. You just can't go around saying down with the white folks in every space, right? Like, sis, you got to channel that energy. So, and he told me some of his stories about what he was into back in the day. So shout out to
Tony went, yeah. Some of that stuff still got statute limitations, ain't run. So I'm glad whatever he said, don't check.
I'm not. That's what I said. He took way back in the day. So shout out. Major shout out to Dr. Montero.
Yeah, I mean, good stuff, y'all. Don't think we talking about revolutionary action movement stuff. Yes. So let's be clear. Tony Montero from them days. So let's just be clear.
Yes, and we're laughing like, yeah, back in the day, like so. Wow. Shout out to him. So, and again, appreciate anybody who took the time, all teachers who took the time to believe in me. And I was lucky enough to have a group of teachers, white and Black, who believed in me, and who supported me throughout my journey in education. And made me who I am today. So definitely, y'all, Teacher Appreciation Week. I know we talked a lot in this podcast about how society creates these kind of dimensions on where it makes it hard to appreciate teachers. But at the end of the day, people are still taking on these jobs. People are still in these classrooms. They are still in front of young people. And there are still people out there who believe in our young people. So definitely take the time to thank a Black teacher, and definitely take the time to be out here just appreciating folks who are still dedicated to the work and believe in young people. Most definitely. Definitely. So as always, like, our time be running and coming out to a close. So one last question I want to ask is, all right, so we do this, right? We declare Black Teacher Week, right? Right. And if we do this in June, or we revive it, right? We revive it because, like you said, that struggle probably was somewhere. It didn't get enough traction, but we want to revive this, right? Black Teacher Week. Who are some of our ancestors, our unsung heroes, who could be symbols in that movement? Who could we memorialize during Black Teacher Week? Who should people be looking at and take examples from? Some of our dear ancestors who have made a real impact on education during Black Teacher Week.
That's a great question. Well, it seemed to me that if we take the model of our period of captivity since we've been here and fighting our way out when it comes specifically to teachers and rituals, because ritual is, as you say, is very important. If we borrow from the past, we can borrow from some of those master teachers who used to write for example, the Negro History Bulletin we've talked about with Carr G. Woodson. During Negro History Week, they would have students make presentations on historical figures who are important to us globally, but also locally. So I guess what I was saying is, if we're going to usher in a Black Teacher Appreciation Week, maybe students could tell us who are the most important teachers. Maybe one of the rituals during that week would be to compile these lists at a local level. And so then when we mention the Benjamin Mazes or the Mary McLeod Bethunes, when we talk about the Carter G. Woodsons or the Barbara Sizemores out of Chicago, when we talk about the great African-centered educators, whether it be Aisha Imani in Philadelphia, or whether it be Amanifu Harvey, whether it be any of those who have created spaces for us to teach and learn, you would then add the local teachers. And then maybe Black Teacher Appreciation Week would be one as connected nationally and then internationally. The great local teachers in the Caribbean, in Africa. Maybe we create a database. And then every year, people are adding to the database. Maybe children could go home and interview people in their family or community. Who were your favorite teachers? So we can recover some of those names from previous generations. And then as we get those names, there can be a database that is sortable. So for example, all the great Black high school principals, All the black, there are those. I mean, for example, there are people in the Bay Area who know the name Marcus Foster, and there are people in Philadelphia who know the name Marcus Foster, and they vaguely know that that's the same Marcus Foster, but they may not know why. You know what I'm saying? So take that name Marcus Foster and make it live through the elders now who actually had Marcus Foster as a teacher, or who worked for Marcus Foster. You know what I'm saying? And that this Black Teachers Week could be an opportunity to construct our Black community by naming those master teachers, and those big names will emerge. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, Benjamin Mays, who was at Morehouse for years as president, was also a teacher at one time at Howard and other places. Sterling Brown, the master teacher at Howard for many years at K-12. You can think about the great master teachers in just about every school district in the country. And I think finally we owe it to those who taught during the days of apartheid, of Jim Crow, to sit with those memories. Right now, I've got about maybe 1,300 people a week. We're reading Barracoon, like we read in Freedom Schools. We're doing it in narrative now, as you mentioned in Nubia, the social media dimension there. We read 1,300 globally. We're talking about, you know, cats from Africa, the Caribbean, England, everywhere, United States. And we're talking about Mobile, Alabama. Well, that sent me back to the history of the Alabama State Teachers Association. The last ship of enslaved of Africans who were enslaved came into the United States 1859 to Clotilda in Mobile, Alabama. That generation then had children who continue to this day in Africatown and Mobile. Many of the names of their teachers are in this book. But we don't think about that because they're all slavery and it. No, we got the names of the Africans that came on that boat, and their great-grandchildren, their grandchildren, their children, and the teachers who taught them in those segregated schools in Mobile, including the Mobile County Training School, which still exists. Black Teachers Week could be a week rather, where we work like Negro History Week used to be, the year round to get to June. And maybe the projects of interviewing teachers and coming up with teachers' names, that could begin in September or August. It could begin in, you know, and then what are we doing? We're building toward June. So it isn't just June, it's all the work that comes into June. Once a month, we all have our meeting and all the high school students get together. Okay, what teachers did you find out? Okay, did you interview your grandma? You supposed to interview your grandma? Hey, we got to get this ready because June is coming. You know yes. And when June comes, you know, they already told you took your standardized test. You ain't doing nothing. You had the prom, everything. We don't do nothing. Oh, no. We know we don't do nothing. You know why? Because that's teacher education. That's Black Teacher Appreciation Week, and we don't do nothing but that. And then once that happens, 2 or 3 years in, watch the school districts try to mess around and start putting stuff in there. Oh wait, no, we have to actually have it. No, this was the week nobody does anything. Now we took it, and now you want to push back. Nah, that's where you're gonna have a fight. So let's just, you know,
we're gonna ease it in. We're gonna ease it in.
Ease
it in. I'm so excited that we were able to actually like record this conversation about Black Teacher Week because I'm gonna come back to this because we're gonna try to revive this. We're gonna make this happen. We are.
I'm excited too.
Yes. But Bob, I want to thank you as always for taking the time to visit us and coming when we official, baby. We live, honey. We a real podcast. But I appreciate you coming.
We here. Anyway.
But definitely to all my folks listening out there, our co-conspirators, our supporters, I want to thank you. We love you for stopping by Building the Black Educator Pipeline podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. We will see you back here next week for another dope episode. Peace, y'all.
Yes. Peace.